Okay, we're holding on the bottom of Beis, Amud Beis. And we're holding the last two words of the Amud. So we're discussing over here the makir of the opinion of the Chachamim in the Mishnah that said that if you have the mavui or the kaira of the mavui that's higher than 20 amis, so you mayit. So the Gemara brought from Rav. Rav said that the makir of the opinion of the Chachamim is because we compare it to the Pesach of the Heichel. The Pesach of the Heichel was also only 20 amis high. So it's the same thing also with the kaira, the negaya to the mavi. That's the maximum height. Fact the Gemara, Ela Meyatov, that's the source. Loi tahani le amaltara, and amaltara should not help for this kaira that's above 20 amis. And amaltara is something that the Gemara is soon going to explain what it is. But in short, an amaltara is some kind of a sign that there is that gets your attention focused on that area. And you see it, and therefore even if it's above 20 amis, it's okay, it's a good hecker because you'll see it. We'll see soon. The Gemara will give two pshatim and amaltara. But the question is, what kind of a benefit would an amaltara have? The ha, you're comparing it to the Pesach of the Heichel. So the ha, Heichel amaltara have yilei. The Heichel also had an amaltara. And the Heichel was only 20 amas high, and that's what's considered to be a Pesach, not more, even with an amaltara. If you want to see the picture of the amaltara, they have it here as well. So you can take a look in picture, just a second. You see it in picture Zayin. They have an amaltara, right? And you can see it in picture Yudalit. Picture Yudalit as well. The amaltara is above the door. They have these lines of wood that are in the wall that is the sign, sort of a design in the wall. That's the amaltara. And nevertheless, it's only 20 amas high. The Tanan, we learned in a Mishnah, Chamesh amaltarois shal meila hayu al gaba of zula ma'ila mizu. There were actually a layer of 5 pieces of wood that were built into the wall, and they were made from meilov. Meilov is a certain kind of a wood that was there on top of the ulam and on top of the heichel, as the Gemara is going to say right now. So the Gemara interjects and asks a question. Wait a minute. V'hai mai tiyufta. What kind of a question is this? Who are we talking about over here? We're talking about the opinion of the Chachamim. Where are the Chachamim learning out from? From the Pesach HaEichel. Dilme ki Tanya hi da amaltarois b'ulam. Tanya. Over there when it says there was an amaltara, maybe that's only referring to the door of the ulam. We're talking about the door of the Heichel. So the Gemara says, V'hai mai kushi, why are you asking this question? Dilme tavnes heichel ke tavnes ulam. The Pesach, the opening of the heichel, is the same like the opening of the ulam. Just like the ulam had amaltarois, those pieces of wood that were above it, the same thing the heichel had as well. The Gemara here uses the lashon dilme, but the Rishonim say that the word dilme doesn't mean kipshutei. The Gemara is not asking a question based on a dilme. The Gemara is making a statement. Just like the ulam had amaltarois on top of it, the heichel also had amaltarois on top of it. Tavnes dilme, tavnes heichel, ke tavnes ulam. So what's our question? Now the Gemara concludes the question. Allah, Ma'amar Rabbi Lo Yomar Rav. Why did Rabbi Lo say in the name of Rav? Rochva Dalid. So he said 2 halachas. The first halacha is not negay really to our Gemara. The first halacha he said is if you have a kaira that's used that's wider than 4 tvachim, afal pisha eina bria, even if it's not strong enough. There's a Mishnah later. We'll learn in Mitzvah Daf Yud Gimel that usually the kaira that's used has to be strong enough to be able to hold a small brick on it. But if it's wide 4 tfachim, so then even if it's not strong enough to hold the brick on it, so then it's good. And the second thing he said, Vim yeshla amaltara, if you have an amaltara, you have a sign there, even if it's higher than 20 amas, you don't have to bring it down. So basically we have a stira in Rav's opinion. Rav said you learn out from the heichel, and over there was an amaltara, and still it's only 20 amas higher, not higher. And here Rav is saying that if it has an amaltara, it could be even higher. Answers the Gemara, Amar Rav Yosef, amaltara masnitehi. This that you just quoted, that if it has an amaltara, then it's fine, it could be higher than 20 amas. Rav didn't say this. It's really a braisa. So there's no stira in Rav's opinion. So now the Gemara asks, so man katanila, Who learned this brisa? Is it a reliable brisa? Amar Abaye, v'hachame bereide Rabbi Baravua ketanila. Yeah, Chame bereide Rabbi Baravua learned this brisa. He taught this brisa. So v'tehevim al-maltere masnita. So even if this statement about the al-maltere is a brisa, v'tikshil Rav, it's still a question on Rav from this brisa. Answers the Gemara, Amalach Rav, Dala Nami Hacha. Take me out of the picture. Masneaisa Mila Kashina Adadi. Isn't there a contradiction between two brises? What's the contradiction of the two brises? Here the brisa says that even if you have an amalta, that even if it's higher than 20 amos, it's fine. And yesterday we learned, the Gemara said that you learn out the whole din of Chaf Ameh from the Heichel, Mi Pischei Shel Heichel. Right, so if you learn out from Pischei Shel Heichel, so then it could only be as high as the Pesach of the Heichel, which is 20 amos, and not higher. So really, it's a stira of two brises. That's what, because Rav learned what he said from the brise, has nothing to do with me. That's what Rav is saying. So isn't it a question without what I said? It's a stira of two brises. So what are you going to answer? Tanoi. If it's a stira of two brises, so it's a machlekes Tanoim. So l'didinami tanoi, according to me as well, it's a machlekes tanoim, and I paskin like the brisa that says that even if it has an amaltera, it still could be only 20 amos and not higher, like it was by the Pesach Ulam. So this is the maskana of Rav's Shitta. Rav's Shitta is this amaltera doesn't help. The kaira for the mavoi cannot be higher than 20 amos. You make a sign there, it draws a person's attention to it, it doesn't matter. Because you're learning it out from Pischei Shel Heichel, that could only be 20 amos high, not higher than that.
Rav says that it doesn't help?
Correct. Even though before we quoted B'Shem Rav that it does, but the Gemara had Charat, the Gemara said that it's not Rav, it was a Braisa. So the Gemara, Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, Rav Nachman by Yitzchak argues. Did I skip something? Second. Second. Dr. Gemara, Rav Nachman by Yitzchak Amar, Rav Nachman by Yitzchak says, Beloy Rav, no, without Rav, Masnisa ahadodi loy kashin. There's no steer here between the brises. L'Rabbanon kaira taimema. You know what the reason why, according to the Rabbanon, when the kaira is higher than 20 amos, it's not good? Mishum kaira. Because of the heker. You have to be able to notice it. The whole point of this kaira is that you should see that it's a mavi. If it's too high, so the eyesight of a person doesn't reach there, and you don't see it, and you don't notice it. That's the reason. Nothing to do with the heichel. So Rav Nachman by Yitzchak is arguing on Rav. And this that it says in the brisa that we quoted before, that you're learning it out that it shouldn't be taller than the Pesach of the heichel, simana ba'alma. That brisa is tam giving a siman. It's telling you the siman that the heichel was that tall. In order, if you shouldn't make a mistake, Rashi says maybe someone would want to change the girsa from 20 to 30. So if it says Pesach Shel Heichel, you'll know that it's 20. But it has nothing to do with the heichel. You don't learn it out from Pesach Shel Heichel. It's mitzad heker ba'alma. And this is how we paskin. This is the maskana that the whole inyan that it's not allowed to be higher than 20 amos has nothing to do with the Pesach Shel Heichel. According to Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, it's mitzad inyan of heker. And therefore, if you make the amaltera, if you make some kind of a sign there, it draws a person's eyes attention. So therefore, it's okay. So even if it's higher than 20 amos.
How high could the amaltera be?
If you have an amaltera, it doesn't say a shear. It could be higher than 20 amos, as high as you want. Doesn't say a shear. Frag the Gemara. Now the Gemara brings back the Gemara that we had, the Mishnah that there is in the beginning of Masechta Sukkah. So there it said that there's the same machlokes of the Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda benegeh to the height of the schach. So the question is, why do you have to have the same machlokes benegeh to Eiruvin and repeat it the second time benegeh to Sukkah? So according to Rav, it's not a question. Rav's pshat is that by Eiruvin you learn it out mipischei shel heichel. The machlokes is whether you learn it from the heichel or you learn it from the ulam. That's here. By Sukkah, the machlokes is whether you could see the schach or not. That's what the Gemara will bring in a moment, whether you could notice the schach. So it's two different machlokes. They have no connection between them. But according to Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, l'chayre, it's the same machlokes. In both cases, the machlokes is whether a person will notice something that's higher than 20 amos or not. Fragt the Gemara, Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, so according to Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, it's well understood if you would not hold of what Rabbi said. And the Gemara here quotes now what Rabbi said when he gave to sukkah. Elis vidile had Rabbi, but if he holds of what Rabbi said, what did Rabbi say? Dama Rabbi ksiv. The pasuk says by sukkah leman yedu doireseichem ki besukkah seishafti. That when you sit in the sukkah, the schach has to be low enough that you could see the schach, and you know that you're sitting in a sukkah. Ad esra mama adam yedei shadar besukkah. Up to 20 yamas, you know that you're sitting in a sukkah. L'mayla mesr mama, if it's higher than 20 yamas, ein adam yedei. The person doesn't know that he's sitting in the sukkah. Mishum d'le shalte be'eina, because a person doesn't pay attention for something that's that high. So, what's the question? Alme gabi sukkah nami b'hakeira pligi. So if so, what's the basis of the machlokes regarding the sukkah that's higher than 20 yamas? It's also a machlokes whether a person's eyesight, whether he'll notice it or not. So if so, the question is, if lugi b'tarti lamali, why is it necessary for Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda to argue twice about the exact same subject? Answers the Gemara, tzricha. It's necessary. If I would say by sukkah, only by sukkah did Rabbi Yehuda say, sukkah is not something that you just walk through. It's not just like an entranceway that you walk through, but you're sitting in the sukkah. It's the derech of a person when you're sitting somewhere, so you notice the roof. Even if it's very high, you sit and you pick up to see where you're sitting, you notice the schach, even if it's very high. So over there, Rabbi Yehuda said that it's fine if it's higher than 20 yamas. A mavoi is just a person walking through. In such a case, Rabbi Yehuda would be made to the Rabbanan that a person wouldn't notice the kaira when it's that high. And on the other hand, if you'd say the halacha only benigeh to Eiruvin, baha kamri Rabbanan, here the Rabbanan said that if it's too high, it's not good because the person doesn't notice it. But by sukkah, there they would be made to Rabbi Yehuda. You're sitting in the sukkah and you'll notice it. So therefore we have to have both cases. So now the Gemara comes back to what we mentioned before, an amaltara. If you make a certain sign, even if it's very high, it's okay, even according to the Chachamim. And we said before, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak is the one that holds that this amaltara is good. My amaltara. So what exactly is this amaltara? Rav Chama berei de Rabba baravua ama kini. It's nests, bird nests. There's few pshatim in the Rishonim what this means. Even in Rashi, it's not 100% clear. Some say that it means that there's actually bird nests there on top of this kaira, which draws a person's attention. Or by the kaira that's made for the mavi.
Oh, that's
And another pshat is that by the heichal it was pieces of wood, as the Gemara is going to say soon. Here we're talking about the kaira, that there's a nest, a nest of birds that is on top of the kaira. Or the pshat is that it has pictures, surah. You make designs of birds and of bird nests on top of the kaira. And it's a nice design which draws a person's attention.
Well, if a nest, it's not something that you
if
make.
What?
If it's a nest, it's not something that you make. It's something
Okay,
just
correct. Kiyasa Ravdimi, Ravdimi, when he came, he said, Amri b'marava in Eretz Yisrael, they said, what's the amaltara? Piski de arza, pieces of cedar wood. Similar to what it was by the Heichal and the Ulam, where they had these pieces of wood that were made in the wall, like a nice molding basically. That's there, and that's the amaltara. So the Gemara now says, Man dama piski de arza, the one that says that having those pieces of wood, that's enough to draw your attention. Kol sheken kini. For sure, having a picture of designs of birds or a bird nest is good enough to draw your attention. Manda makini, the one that says that it's the birds that draw your attention, or the pictures of the birds that draw your attention. Avol piski da arza, just having pieces of wood there in the wall, like that's not enough to draw your attention. Now the Gemara asks how this applies regarding a sukkah. Man dama piski darze, the one that says that you have pieces of wood that are in the wall over there and it draws your attention. My time, how does this draw your attention? Mishum dem nafish meshchei, because you have long pieces of wood that are in the wall. You probably have a picture of it over here. And you have the picture beneged to the ulam right over here, right? The pieces of wood that are in the wall. Right, so you have these long pieces of wood. If you want to take a look in the picture Yud Zayin, they have the picture of the pieces of wood that are placed in the wall. So because it's long, so therefore it draws your attention. If so, frek the Gemara v'hasukkah the nafesh meshchei, a sukkah also has a certain length, and nevertheless v'ka'amri rabbanan delay, and the rabbanan say that it doesn't work, that it's not good. So a kaira, well, you usually have to put up one beam. So there's one beam there, so therefore that's something that's you won't notice it. But the schach of a sukkah, shouldn't the schach of a sukkah be long enough that the person should notice it? So why do the Rabbanan say it doesn't work? So the Gemara changes now the pshat. Ella, rather, the pshat of here is kivin de kachashiv isle kala. You know why this draws your attention? Not because it's something that's actually noticeable, that it has a certain length that you notice it. Because then you would say that by sukkah you would notice even if it's higher than 20 amas. The reason is because it's a nice design that people talk about. People say, oh, look at this. This is the fancy chutzner. This is the fancy mavoi. They have this nice design here. Because people talk about it, so people look up to see what it is. But it's not, the length itself doesn't necessarily draw your attention. It's the kail, it's the rumor that people talk about that causes people to look up and notice it. Zok the Gemara. So it has to be within 20 amas, right? Not higher than 20 amas. Now the Gemara is going to discuss this more specifically, the exact height. How about if you have a case, miktsas kaira b'toich esrim, part of the kaira that you put up is higher than 20 amas, so miktsas kaira, again, is a miktsas kaira b'toich esrim, part of it is within 20 amas, or miktsas kaira l'maylam esrim, and part of it is higher than 20 amas. Or similar, miktsas schach b'toich esrim, part of the schach has a certain thickness to it, so part of the schach is within 20 amas, or miktsas schach l'maylam esrim amma, and part of the schach is higher than 20 amas. So, is it good or not? Do you go according to the interior of the sukkah and you say that it's below 20 amas, or do you go according to the height of the schach on the outside or the height of the kaira on the top that it's above 20 amas? Amar Rabbe, so Rabbe says, b'mavoi kosher. In a mavoi, we're going to be makel and say that it's kosher. B'sukkah, pasel. But in a sukkah, it's going to be pasel. Fragt the Gemara, ma'ishno b'mavi de kosher. What's the difference? Why are you saying in a mavi that it's kosher? Da'amrinon kolosh. Because by a mavi, what would we say? We'll say kolosh, which means thin out that kaira. The kaira has, let's say, a thickness of a tefach, whatever it is. Make believe as if that top part of the kaira is not there. We don't need it. We don't need it to be that thick. So the fact that the top part is above 20 amas, who cares? Kolosh, just thin it out as if it's not there. Sukkah, nami leima kolosh. Say the same thing also regarding a sukkah. Consider that schach of the sukkah to be a little bit thinner. The thickness is not needed, and therefore it's as if it's all below 20 amas. But if that's the case, it's going to be a problem. If you consider the schach of the sukkah to be much thinner, what happens then? So then you don't have the thickness to make it kosher. Then it's going to be more sun than shade. But Zakta Gemara, if that's your issue, apply the same thing over here when you get to the mavoi. Hachanami ikolshis. If you consider the kaira to be thin, havile kaira and itelas beruach. So then you don't have a kaira that's heavy enough, and it's like a thin kaira. It's the wind that could pick it up, it can blow it away, and it's not good enough of a kaira. We had before, the Gemara said that a kaira has to be heavy enough that it could hold a brick on top of it, a small brick on top of it. But if you're going to consider it to be thin, so then it's just could fly away with the wind. It's not a good kaira. So the point the Gemara is saying is, what's the difference between sukkah and mavoi? So the Gemara continues and says, Elo, so what are you going to have to say? Al karchach, the pshat over here is, nasu kishpudin shal matches. So regarding the kaira by the mavoi, even if you're saying that it's as if it's thin and the top that's above 20 amas is non-existent, but the fact is the heaviness is there. We consider it as if that top part is not there. But the heaviness that we don't take away. The fact is, it is heavy enough to be a good kaira. So therefore, it's like a heavy piece of metal, and it's kosher. So chanami, apply the same svara regarding the sukkah. Al karchach nasas silasam rubim mechamasa. The fact is that it has more shade than sun. So the Gemara is saying we could say both things at the same time. We could consider it as if the top part of the schach is not there in order for it to be kosher, and it's not above 20 amas. Right? We consider it, but on the other hand, though, you can't say that it has more sun than shade. The fact is, it has more shade than sun, and therefore it should be kosher. So what's the reason? The bottom line is, the Gemara's question is, what's the reason to distinguish between the schach that we said is pasul if part of it is above 20 amas, and the kaira that's kosher if part of it is above 20 amas? So the Gemara gives two pshatim. Ravada b'masni. Sorry, where am I here? Omarava mi Parzakia. So Rava of Parzakia said, Sukkah de l'yachid sukkah, which is made for one individual to sit in, loy mitka. He's not going to remember. he's not going to remember this halacha. Meaning that what might happen is, Rashi explains, what might happen is, right now, part of Yischach is below 20 amas. So it's good, it's kosher. But what happens if part of the schach is going to be removed? That part that's below 20 amas is going to be removed somehow. It's going to dry up and it's going to be removed, and then it's going to be totally higher than 20 amas. It might change. It might be totally all higher than 20 amas. A yachid alone is not going to realize, he's not going to remember that this is now a pasal sukah. Mavoi, the lerabim, a mavi which is used by many people that live there, mitkiriyad dadi. Many people, they're going to remind each other, there's going to be somebody that's going to be, that machmer, that's going to remember, and he's going to say, oi, look, it's already many years and the wood rotted and it's all above 20 amas, so therefore we could rely on people reminding each other. That's the difference. Ravina says, no, there's a difference between sukkah and mav is very simple. Sukkah, the oiraise, achmire berabanan. Sukkah is minatayre, so therefore the rabbanan are more machmer. If part of it is higher than 20 amas, it's possible. Mavi the rabbanan, the whole takana of having the kaira by the mavi is all the rabbanan, lo achmire berabanan. So the rabbanan were not so stringent. Sagt der Gemara weiter, Rav Ade ba Masni laha shmaitese der Rave, l'shmaite der Rave ipche. Rav Ade ba Masni learned this halacha of Rabbe, the opposite of the way we just learned it. And he said as follows, Amar Rabbe b'mavoi pasel, by a mavoi, if part of the kaira is higher than 20 amas, it'll be pasel. And by sukkah we're more lenient, and we say ksheira, that it's going to be kosher. So the Gemara now is going to repeat the entire question that we just had before. Why by sukkah is it kosher? Because we consider it to be thin. That part that's above 20 amas, we consider it's not there. But say the same thing regarding the kaida by the mavi, that it's considered to be thin, as if that part that's above 20 amas is not there. So the Gemara says, if you're going to consider it to be thin, have it like kaida and tell us beruach. So then the kaira is too light; it could fly away with the wind. If so, hachanami kolshus have lechamasa merubah mitzilasav. You consider the schach to be thin, so then you have more sun than shade. El al karchach. The answer is no, we don't say that. Nasis salasa merubah michamasa. Look at the fact right now; it has more shade than sun. Hachanami al karchach nase keshpudin shalmatches. Even if you consider that part that's above 20 amas not to be there, but the fact is it is heavy enough, like a heavy piece of metal. So what is the difference between the sukkah and the mavoi? So here the Gemara gives an opposite svara. Amar Rava mi Parzakia, so Rava of Parzakia said, sukkah de l'yachidhi, a sukkah that's made for one individual, rami anafshei. So he knows I have nobody else to rely on. I have to pay attention to my sukkah to make sure it's kosher. Nobody else is going to tell me that it's a kosher sukkah, so I better make sure that my schach is the right height. Umitka, he'll remember. Mavoi, the l'rabemi, the mavoi that's for many people, samchia, dadi, everybody relies, one person relies on somebody else to take care of the kashrus of the kaira. V'lei mitkiri, and they're not going to realize, they're not going to remember. The amri inchi, people say, kedeira de beishutvi, when you have a pot that's made for partners together, they're cooking, it's not going to be hot and it's not going to be cold. This is a famous statement that people use, and this is the source of it. When you have a pot that two people are using together to cook it for themselves, so then it's not going to be hot and not going to be cold. What's pshat in this statement? So usually people think the pshat is, because when you have partners in one pot, one guy wants it hot and one guy wants it cold, so it ends up being not hot and not cold. But the Marsha says, from our Gemara you see, that's not the pshat. The pshat is, even if you have two partners that are getting along and they want the same thing, they both want it to be hot, but the problem is each one is relying that the other one is taking care of it. He's going to bring enough wood for the fire for the pot, and each one is relying on the other one to take care of it, and in the end no one takes care of it, and therefore the pot remains loy chamim v'loy krira.
It should be cold then.
Chanami, okay, good. But the point is, yeah. So the same thing over here as well, that when you get to the kaira, because you have a whole mavoi of people and everybody is relying on someone else to take care of it, so it's loy chamim v'loy krira.
It doesn't even begin.
Okay. Sagt die Gemara, Ravina Amar, Ravina says, sukkah de oiraise. So before we said that by sukkah that's minat Torah, so you're more machmer, but now the Gemara says the opposite. Sukkah that's minat Torah, loy boy chizuk. Because it's a mitzvah minat Torah, a person will be careful on his own to make sure that it's good. It doesn't need us to be mechazik, this mitzvah minat Torah. The Rabbanon, when you come to a kaira which is exerim the Rabbanon, boy chizuk. This is something that needs a chizuk. My havi Allah. What was the halacha l'maisa b'negei to this question? Part of it's above 20 amas and part of it below 20 amas. So Rabbi Baravula Ama Zeveze Apostle. That in both cases, regarding the sukkah, regarding the mavoi, in both cases it's apostle. Rava Ama and Rava Paskins, and this is how we paskin, Zeh v'zeh kosher. In both cases, it's going to be kosher. And the reason is, Chalal Sukkah Tnan. The main thing, when we say this shear of 20 amas, you know what it means? From the ground until the where the schach begins, until where the kaira begins. It's talking about the interior. It's not talking about the height of the kaira itself or the height of the schach itself. It's talking about the chalal, the interior of the sukkah, or the interior below the kaira. That's the pshat of the Mishnah. Amalei Rav Papa l'Rava, so Rav Papa says to Rava, Tanya the Messiah law, I'll bring a right to what you said. Mavoi shugavoya mesra mama yoisim epischa shel heichal. We had the brayse before that if it's taller than the opening, the doorway of the heichal, yamayit, you have to bring it down. The heichal gufay. What was the height of the doorway of the heichal? Chalala yesrim. It was the inside, the interior of the doorway that was the height of 20 amas. Right? Not the frame of the doorway that was above, that was 20 amas. The frame may have been even higher. The actual entrance, the chalal, was 20 amas. So therefore he says the halach over here is also benegeh to the chalal. So the Gemara, the Rishonim say that now according to this, the Gemara is actually going a step further than what it said before. Before we were talking about a case where we were focusing on the kaira, and we said the kaira or the schach, part of it is above 20 amas and part of it is below 20 amas. But now that what the Gemara is saying is we're not looking at the kaira or the schach itself. What we have to look at is the interior. Even if the entire kaira is basically mostly above 20 amas, but you have to look at the interior. That's the main thing. What's on top of the kaira itself doesn't matter. It's the cholol. It says clearly in a brayse as follows. How do you do this? The kaira maniach kaira misfas esrim ulamata. So from the edge of 20 amas, the height of 20 amas, and below. So it's mashma that the actual kaira itself has to be within 20 amas, not just the interior space below the kaira. So the Gemara says, no. Eime ulamayla. That it's from 20 amas and higher, that the kaira could be above the 20 amas. That's how you have to read it. Frek the Gemara, but it's not what it says in the brayse. V'ho lamata katani. It says in the brayse lamata, not lamayla. And it says the Gemara a different shot. Ha kamash malam. You know what this brayse is telling you? The lamata kilamayla. You have to read the brayse as two separate statements. What's the halacha regarding the kaira? And similar regarding the sukkah. It's not allowed to be higher than 20 amas, but then there's a minimum height. It can't be less than 10 tfachim. So what the brayse here is saying is as follows. The lamata l'mayla. Ma l'mayla, just like when it comes to the height, that it's not allowed to be higher than 20 amas. Chalola esrim. We're talking about the interior of it. That shouldn't be more than 20 amas. Af lamato chalola asara. So too, when we talk about the minimum height, it has to be the minimum height of 10 tfachim. Okay, so when you read this brayse, maniach kairem is fast esrim, period, ulamata, and so too regarding the height, the minimum height, that has to be the interior of 10 tfachim. That's the pshat in this. So this is an important thing, and mentioned this yesterday. We're going to need some pictures for this, okay? But the Gemara now is going to discuss an amma. How big is an amma? What's the size of an amma? So Amar Abai Mishmei Rav Nachman, Amas Sukkah va Amas Mavoi, the Amma that we use for a Sukkah and the Amma that we use for a Mavoi. You have the Gemaras there though? There's more Gemaras? So the Amma that we use regarding a Sukkah, to measure for a Sukkah, and the Amma that we use for measuring for a Mavoi, Ba'Amma Bas Chamisha. We use an Amma of 5 Tvachim, not 6 Tvachim, but 5 Tvachim. Amas Klayim, an amma that we use regarding Klayim, ba'amma bas shisha. Over here we use an amma of 6 tvachim. Right? As the Gemara will explain, in both of these cases we're always going to be machmer. We're always going to use an amma to be machmer. Right? So there are two different kinds of ammas. There's the Mekayris for this in the Psukim, where you see in, I think it's in Yecheskel, I don't remember now where it is, but you have in the Psukim where you see sometimes an amma could be of 6 tvachim and sometimes of 5 tvachim. So it depends, in each case you go l'chumrah. So the Gemara explains. Amas Mavoi Ba'ama Bas Chamisha, when we said that regarding the Mavoi, so the Amma is 5 Tvachim large, L'mai Hilchasa, regarding what are we saying that the Amma is 5 Tvachim, L'goivai. For what we're talking about over here, to measure the height of 20 Amas, right? Or L'pirtzas Mavoi, or also for the width, to measure the width, that it has to be 10 Amas and not more than 10 Amas. Right? So what kind of an Amma do you have to measure with? With a smaller Amma. An Amma of 5 Tvachim, which means that we're more machmer, that it has to be a lower height. If it's going to be high, even just the Amas of 5 Tvachim, it's going to be a problem. So we're being machmer with this. Okay, Frek the Gemara, okay, you're right. It comes out if you're measuring the height or you're measuring the width, so you're using this kind of amas, it's going to be a chumrah. But there's also a different case that we're going to learn soon in the Gemara, not today, but in the Hemshech of the Gemara, we're going to learn about the meshech, the amount of space that you have to have in a mavoi, that you have to have 4 amas, that over there it's going to come out a kula. We'll see soon in Mitzvah Shem. The Gemara there talks about a case where you have a mavoi that doesn't have the minimum height, and you have to dig into the ground to give it the minimum height. How much space do you have to dig in the ground to give it the minimum height? So according to one opinion, it's a machlokes. One opinion says you have to dig in the ground at least a space of 4 amas. The lakula. So if you're going to say that you're using an amma that's made up of 5 tfachim, so it's a kula. You don't have to dig that much. You don't have to dig larger space of amas of 6 tfachim. You have to dig only the amas of 5 tfachim. So in this case, it comes out to be a leniency. All right, so you're using it as a chumrah regarding the height of the kaira or regarding the width of the opening, but in this case it comes out to be a leniency. So the Gemara says, you're right, Kamanda Omar Barba Tvachim. This statement of Abaye in the name of Rav Nachman is following a different opinion. It's following the opinion that said that in that case you only need 4 Tvachim. There's no share of 4 amas. So over there we're not using a smaller amma for that. V'bai Seima, another answer, Ba'arba amas V'roiv amas ka'omar. We are following the opinion that says that over there you need 4 amas, and it would be a leniency in that case, but when Abaye said that regarding a mavoi you use the amas of 5 tvachim, it's not in every single case. In most cases, you use the amma of 6 tvachim. Right? When it comes of the amas of 5 tvachim. When it comes to the height, and when it comes to the width, we're machmer. And we use the height of an amma, which is a shorter amma, to be machmer. When it comes to this case, when you have to dig into the ground and make the right space for it, for the mavoi, over there we're going to be machmer as well, and we're going to say that it has to be an amma of 6 tvachim. So it's only in roiv cases, not always. Now the Gemara says how this measurement of an amma applies to a sukah. Amma sukah, what's the case regarding a sukah? Where does this apply? Ba'ama bas chamisha, l'mai hilchasa. In what case is this relevant? L'goiva, also the same thing that we just said regarding the height, can't be too tall, so we're using a shorter height, which is a chumrah. And also l'doifen akuma, regarding the halacha of doifen akuma. What's the halacha of doifen akuma? If a person makes a hole in the center of the ceiling to put schach for a sukkah, and the schach of the sukkah doesn't reach the wall, so the halacha is, probably have a picture of it over here, it's in picture Yud-Ches or Yutes. So the schach doesn't reach directly to the wall, we consider the wall as if it's a wall that's slanted. We consider the roof to be part of the wall. To what extent could you consider the roof to be part of the wall? If that space of the roof is within 4 amas. If it's less than 4 amas, so then it can be considered to be part of the wall. If it's more than 4 amas, so then we can't apply the concept of doifen akuma, and then your schach is not near the wall and it's not going to be a kosher sukkah. So in this case as well, what kind of amas are we going to measure? We're going to measure with shorter amas. Because we're measuring with shorter amas, so therefore is a chumrah. Frek the Gemara, but regarding sukkah as well, I could see a kula. I'll give you a case of a kula for ha'ike meshach sukkah. How about the actual size of the sukkah itself? What's the minimum size of how large a sukkah has to be? Ba'arba amas, the size of a sukkah is 4 amas. If you're using smaller amas, comes out to be a leniency. You're allowing a smaller sukkah to be kosher. The Lakula, it's a leniency. The Tanya, we learned in Abraisa, Rebbe said, I say, Kol sukkah shein ba dal damas al dal damas psula. Any sukkah that doesn't have the minimum size of 4 by 4 amas is pasul. So, in this case, it comes out that we're using a smaller amma, it's a leniency. Answers the Gemara, Kirabanan. Over here, we're following the opinion of the Rabbanan. The Amri, the Rabbanan said, if you have a sukkah that could hold the person's head and most of his body and his table, that's going to be kosher. What's that size? This is how we paskin actually, that a sukkah has to be 7 tfachim by 7 tfachim. That's the size of a sukkah. So there's no leniency because we're not talking about the shear of amis. We're talking about the shear of tfachim. And the Ibai same, or the Gemara says the same answer we said before. La'ilam Rebbe, we could be following the opinion of Rebbe as well. V'roiv amais ka'amar. When he says that you use the shorter amma, he means in most cases. In this case, regarding the minimum size of the sukkah, you're right. We would be using the larger amais to be machmer. Now the Gemara goes to Klayim. So we said before that when it comes to Klayim, and we have to measure regarding Klayim, we use the larger amas. To be more machmer, we use the larger amas. So the basic idea regarding Klayim is, of course, the concept of Klayim is that you're not allowed to plant any vegetables inside a field, inside a vineyard. So what's if you have a vineyard and you want to plant vegetables there? There has to be a distance. There has to be a space, a distance to separate from the vineyard to other things that you're planting there. And the Gemara here is going to bring a machlokes regarding how much of a distance you have to have and what kind of amais do we measure for that distance. We measure with amais of 6 tfachim. To be machmer, we measure with larger amais. Let's see. So it says in the Mishnah regarding the Indian of Klayim, Amas Klayim Ba'ama Bas Shisha L'mayil Chesed. So what does this apply to? L'karachas hakerem. If you have a bold spot in the middle of a vineyard and you want to know if you could plant over there, or you have an empty space that's around the vineyard, not in the middle. The word mechayel is like a circle. You have around the vineyard. Many times on the perimeters of the field, a person keeps it empty and he doesn't plant. So you can take a look over here in the picture. So you see in picture Chaf is when you have an empty space in the middle and you're going to plant there, or you look in picture Chaf Beis is where you have the empty space on the outside and the person wants to plant on the outside. Right? So over here you have to plant but keep a distance from the vineyard. So how much of a distance do you have to have? Zog the Mishnah, the Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, Karachas Aklayim, if you have if you have an empty space, a bald spot in the middle of the vineyard, Beshamai Yemrim, Beshamai say Esrim Va'arba Amos. You have to have a space of 24 Amos in the middle to be able to plant there. Or Besilul Yemrim, Besilul say Sheshes Amos. You only need the empty space of 16 Amos to be able to plant there. That's regarding an empty space in the middle, a bald spot. If you have an empty space around the vineyard, so how much empty space do you need there to plant? Beishamai say that over there you need 16 amos is enough. Or Beisilul say 12 amos. You need only 12 amos to be able to plant there. So now the Gemara explains, why do we come up with this number? The Gemara is only going to explain Beis Hillel's opinion and not Beis Shammai's opinion, because of course we're passing like Beis Hillel. So Eizehi Karachas HaKerem, what's this bold spot in the middle of the vineyard that you could plant there? Kerem Shechorav Emtzeisai, a vineyard that's empty in the middle. In Ein Sham Sheishes Amais, if you don't have an empty spot of 16 amas, according to Beis Hillel, Lo Yavi Zera L'Sham, you can't plant any vegetables there. Hoyesham Sheishes Ama, if you do have 16 amas there, you could plant. But here's the thing, if you're going to plant the entire 16 amas, if you'll fill it all up, it's still going to be mixed in with the vineyard. So therefore the Mishnah explains what you have to do. You have to make space between the vineyard and the vegetables that you're going to plant enough for the person to be able to walk through to do his work there. How much is that space to be able to walk through to do your work? 4 amas. 4 amas to be able to walk through with whatever machinery you have to do your work. And then and then the rest you could plant. So if you take a look in the picture, so you see that you have to have 4 amas on both sides to be able to have empty space between the vineyard and the place where you're planting. So basically you could plant 8 amas, right? And then you have on both sides 4 amas in between for the person to be able to go by with his horse and with whatever work he has to do for the vineyard. Okay, so that's regarding, that's a total of 16 amas, that's right. You can plant 8 amas and then you have to have on each side a space of 4 amas to be able to walk through. That's regarding an empty space in the middle. What's considered to be machal hakerem when you have on the perimeters, you have on the outside an empty space where you want to plant. So ben kerem legeder, you have a space between the vineyard and the gate of your vineyard. So according to Beis Hillel, if you don't have 12 amas of a space there, you can't plant it. But if you have a space of 12 amas, so then what do? Similar thing. You always have to keep a space of 4 amas for the person to be able to work there. And the rest you could plant. Right? So you see this also in picture Chav Beis, where you have 4 amas between the vineyard and the zrayim, and then another 4 amas between the wall and the zrayim where you planted to give the person space to be able to walk through there, to be able to do his work. So what's the bottom line? In the measurement of the amos regarding not having klayim, we're more machmer, and what kind of amos do we use? We use the amos of 6 tfachim. So we're more machmer. Frag the Gemara, but if you're using larger amos for kalayim, there is a certain case where it's going to come out to be a kula. And what case is that? There's a case of ritzufim. Okay, there's no picture for this because it's just a simple concept. Concept of ritzufim is when you have a vineyard that is, the vineyards are planted very, very tightly together. There's no space between one tree and another. So that halpi halacha doesn't have a halacha of a vineyard, because the person can't come in between to even take the grapes out. There's no space for him to go in. So in such a case, there's no din of klayim. According to Rashi, there's b'chlal, you can plant wherever you want any of vegetables because it doesn't have the din of a kerem. Okay, according to other Rishayim, you cannot plant mamish right by the vineyard. You have to separate only 6 tfachim. Usually, as we just learned, you have to have a space of 4 amas of a distance. But in such a case, you only have to separate 6 tfachim. So if you have a case which is ritzufim, if the trees of the vineyard, if the vineyard is planted in a way that there's less of a space than 4 amas between one tree and another tree, the lakula, in this case it's going to be a leniency if you're using bigger amas. The tanan if you have a vineyard and the trees are packed together so close, there's less of a space of 4 amas between one row and another row, so then Rab Shimon ain't a kerem. That's not a kerem. You can't come between. You can't use it. The Chachamim say it is a kerem. And those the trees from the vineyard that are there in between that don't allow you to pass through, we consider it as if it's not there, because eventually the person's going to have to cut them off to be able to get through, to be able to reach his grapes. Okay, so what do we see over here? Sometimes when you get a kerem, adarabah, if you're going to use bigger amos, it's going to be a kula. Because in this case, because you're going to consider it not to be a kerem and you're going to allow it to plant there, so it comes out of kula. And it says the Gemara kerabanan. Our Gemara here is going according to the Rabbanan that say even if it's tightly, the rows are very tight together, it doesn't matter. It's still a vineyard. The Amri have a kerem. It's still a vineyard. So therefore, there's no application over here. There's no kula in this case. Or the Gemara gives the answer that it said before, La'olam ke Rab Shimon. Really, we are following the opinion of Rab Shimon. V'roiv amos ka'omar. And we were only saying roiv amos. And by kalayim, usually you follow the shear of an amma, which is 6 tfachim. Sometimes, if it'll be a kula to you do that, you're going to have to follow the amma, which is only 5 tfachim. Okay.